your name and your connection to Smith Island.
Yes, my name is Sherry Marsh Johns. I am a 14th generation Smith Islander. My parents were Calvin Marsh, he was from Tylerton, and my mom, Gloria Tyler, grew up on Roach Point, and I was born to Roach Point in 1965. There's just this feeling of closeness and belonging that you do not get anywhere else, because everyone, at least back then when everyone was native to the island, they knew you, they knew your parents, they knew your grandparents. And there was nothing about your character, whether, I'm not just talking about they recognized you from your looks, but if you had a bad temper, they knew, oh, you get that from your dad, or you got a great sense of humor, oh, you got the wit of the Tyler. Well, I guess it's just quiet and beautiful and peaceful, and you know everyone. In some ways that can be claustrophobic, I think, for a lot of people, because everybody knows your business. And as they say, we're Christian people, we like to forgive, but we want to know exactly what it is we're forgiving. Once you knew how to swim, there wasn't really any worry, because where could you go? There was no crime, there were very few cars to worry about in that regard. So, and living on Smith Island as it was, with 500 people who knew who you were and who your parents were, it was this big surveillance network of love. So you could just leave the house in the morning, and maybe someone would call and say, "Oh, she's down here." My dad was a waterman. Everyone in my family were watermen. Basically, at that time, everyone on Smith Island was a waterman, unless you were the preacher. Kind of a segregated sort of system over there. Women pick crabs, process crabs, and the men do the actual, business of crabbing. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Yes, during the summer, she picked crabs, which, could be, 8 or 9 hours a day in itself. Dad would get in the early afternoon, having left, before dawn, bring home the crabs. He would sell the largest crabs because they were more valuable, but what she couldn't sell or didn't want to sell, she would steam and turn into crab meat. So after dinner, she would pick crabs in the evening. But by the time I was a teenager, life on the water was getting much harder. Everything's either, you don't take anything at face value. Everything's either hyperbole or sarcasm. So, for example, if a man said, "Well, she's an ugly woman, but that was a pretty rig she was wearing," it means she's a beautiful woman, but he was appalled by whatever outfit she had on. And even when you say what you mean, for example, everything's exaggerated. If you're tired, you're nearly dead. You don't hurt yourself, you're killed. And my husband, after 30 years, you think he would know how to speak this. He was out working the wood one day. He came in and he said, "I've killed myself." I'm looking for obvious injury. I'm like, "What's wrong?" He said, I've been chopping wood all morning." I'm like, "Honey, you're not killed. You're nearly dead." So, even for someone who is as close to it as Gary, it's still a little bit too remote for him to grasp. Or they're very expressive, I guess. And if you've been walking all day, or you're really busy, somebody will say, "Well, you'll need cornstarch." Meaning we tend to be heavy-set people who chafe easily from a lot of walking. It can be impenetrable. I have, as you can tell, I don't really have any accent left. It's also because part of the reason you have to get rid of the accent when you leave there is it's not just the accent, but it's also a whole dialect, and it's a syntax and a grammar and a way of expression all its own. And it doesn't work if you can't say, put the sentences together the way we would. These things remind me of my dad. Like, asked if that ain't the limit. When he really didn't cuss, but if he was exasperated with something, or "I swaggered I," which loosely is kind of an Elizabethan translation, or "I will swear or die." And I just as lief. There's all these old sayings that you can actually. I was reading the works of Shakespeare, and they leaf to L-I-E-F. I thought it used to be leave. Is I just as lief starve. I just as lief go home. So that's an old hangover phrase. I just always enjoy, when I hear when the old people, say, oh, well, that's if that ain't the limit. I know that, just makes me think of my dad. A lot of people talk about the global warming aspect. We have so many new people coming over and talking about, oh, Smith Island is sinking. It's not going to be here in another 50 years. And I'm like, well, I wish that could be our immediate concern. Every year they talk about closing our school. More and more, like I said, there are 20 kids graduate with me. My nephew will be a class of one when he graduates. There are far more pressing existential threats to Smith Island. If it's not viable to make a living on the bay, people are not going to stay there. As much as many people love it, there's still people who find a way to make it work on the water, working for the Department of Natural Resources or the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, but for the most part, a lot of them moved to Crisfield. And that's the downside of these obituary pieces that people do on Smith Island. I mean, I think they're good, well-intended to bring attention to the climate change, but to the decision makers, they said, well, why are we going to put money into fixing the roads or fixing the school or keeping the library open if it's not going to be here? But we're resilient. We don't give up easily. In the 18th century, we were farmers, and when the erosion made the farmland untenable, we became oystermen, and then crabbers when the oyster harvest played out. Now we're, making cakes and having tourists over. But there's a very strong belief that, this place is special, that I very much believe that we think it was blessed by God, and that as long as we trust in Him, that Smith Island is going to be there, and that is really in His hands. That no one's going to leave, or there will always be a Smith Island in our culture and our way of life as long as we maintain our faith.